Hey guys, Marble Tyler here, and today let's talk about 343, right? It's the studio that creates the Halo games currently, and so for those of you that don't know, 343 took over the Halo series from Bungie that you may know from Destiny. They moved on to make those games under Activision until recently. So Bungie created Halo. It was originally a variety of different genres, right? But 343 took over in 2010. Halo Reach was the last Bungie game. So 343 has been in charge for almost 10 years. And they've had a couple game releases since then. And I'm going to talk about which one I think kind of launched in the best condition. Obviously, this is a debatable topic, so if you disagree, let me know in the comments. But here are my thoughts on which Halo game 343 made best. And so since their takeover, there have been 5 full AAA games that have been released, not including Spartan Assault or the Dave and Buster's one. And I'm going to dismiss Halo Wars 2 of these 5 just because 343 didn't really have they had the creative say, right? But they didn't have much in terms of game design and development and all this other stuff. That was made by a separate studio, so it's kind of hard to say 343 had a huge impact on this. Obviously they did. It's okay that it was made by a separate studio. I'd still say it's under 343's belt. But that being said, it's not a first-person shooter. It's kind of hard to compare for the rest. So we're just going to dismiss that one. I do think that game is really good, but it's hard to compare to these rest. And 343 probably had the least amount of active influence on this game than any of them. So with that out of the way, let's talk about the other 4 games that released while 343's been in charge. So let's go backwards, right? We got Halo 5. Now, Halo 5 at launch was missing a lot of content. There's a lot of things that was where's Infection? Where's Forge? Where's this? Where's that? And later on, we got those things in updates. The game worked fine, right? There was no problems there. But overall, it's kind of negative. Basically, if you look at Halo 5's launch, super simple. There wasn't a lot of content. And it was very lacking for most Halo fans. And so, unfortunately, Halo 5 wasn't that good at launch. I mean, the gameplay was solid, don't get me wrong, right? It launched in a working condition, but as more things came out, and working, quote-unquote, because obviously there's some things that really weren't, theater mode being included in that. But, looking back, Halo 5 at launch, not nearly as good as it could have been. Halo 5 didn't really hit its stride until, updates and updates a year later. Generally, the Firefight update is when Halo 5 started to feel complete. So, at launch, not so much. Halo 5, not really. Now, 1 year before Halo 5 was the Master Chief Collection. Obviously not an original game. It was, the remasters of all these things, plus Halo 2 Anniversary was included. But, yeah, that game didn't really launch in the greatest conditions. Obviously, the multiplayer did not work whatsoever. The campaigns were glitchy as all heck. Things did not work properly. And what more is there to say? If you're a Halo fan or if you're new to the series, you've probably, even if you're new to the series, you've probably heard of all the mishaps with the Master Chief Collection. It didn't go well. So, unfortunately, there's not much more to say. There wasn't anything good about the MCC at launch except the fact that you could at least play the games on Xbox One and they were technically 1080 60 frames if you're playing the campaigns. But multiplayer, you couldn't really get into a game, so yeah, the MCC did not launch in a good state whatsoever. There's not much more to say beyond that. Now, let's rewind 2 more years, right? We have Halo 4, and it was complete. It worked, but it's not that good in hindsight for the series. Campaign aside, people like the story. Some people do, some people don't. But gameplay-wise, it was a Call of Duty knockoff. The graphics were pretty good. They really, really pushed the Xbox 360 to its limits. And it launched mostly complete. There you go. The multiplayer, again, it died off super fast because it was just a COD clone. Changed the gameplay significantly. And it didn't really feel like Halo. Some people didn't like the story. Especially initially, the story was not received well whatsoever. And it died really fast after launch. So, of course we're talking about launch here, so technically it had players and everything, but it didn't live up to the series. It didn't live up to the legacy. And so ultimately, Halo 4's launch was decent. It's probably the best of the ones we've talked about so far. And so if you haven't figured it out already, obviously I chose this gameplay for a reason. Uh, Halo Combat Evolved Anniversary. It worked. I mean, it was a great launch. Of course, 10 years to the date after the original launched, and we have Halo Combat Evolved. And it looked gorgeous. And it did something anniversaries I feel like really need to do more often, where you could switch back and forth between, the old and the new graphics. Now on 360, you had to, it would like cut to black and then come back. Meanwhile, on Xbox One, hit the button, instantly back in classic graphics. And I think that was a really cool concept. It doesn't really seem to be appearing anywhere else, which is kind of upsetting. Like, I would love to see, for example, the Insane trilogy or the Spyro trilogy that were remastered to implement something like this, where you could switch back and forth and see the classic graphics. But of course, these are new engines, and Halo CE seems to be running on the same engine for the remaster in both Xbox One and 360 versions. The other thing that came out with this was multiplayer for Halo Reach that featured Halo CE maps. So they didn't really have their own multiplayer for this, but you got Reach multiplayer with Halo CE, new maps added to it. And so I think it was a good substitute. I think it was a good option because obviously Halo CE's multiplayer, to make servers just for that, that doesn't always make sense. I mean, CE's multiplayer was rough sometimes. It wasn't the greatest, but it's still a ton of fun. So substituting it into Reach, that sounded good enough for me. Now I do need to say, the game was mostly developed by Saber Interactive, so I do want to loosely say that. And in fact, they almost got the design wrong for the Chief, and it just kind of looked funky. Let me show an image real quick. This is from the original trailer, the debut for the anniversary idea. Yeah, it doesn't quite look as chiefy as it was supposed to. A little weird, but, and that's fine. And in the game itself, it reused a lot of assets from Halo Reach. So some people didn't like that, I get it. Halo Reach wasn't always the best looking game, but for the most part, it was well received at launch. It worked. It was classic gameplay, like straight up classic gameplay. And for the most part, it launched in a better condition than any of 343's other games. Now, I do want to just bring up, I don't know what that means for the series. Obviously, this is just me talking about what I think 343's best game so far is. And obviously, again, they didn't even develop this game. This game wasn't made by them. This game was made by Saber Interactive. Though 343 did have heavy influence on this game, much more than, I guess, much more technically than Halo Wars 2. Not in terms of story or design, but just in terms of sheer, interactivity. But it's almost curious to me how, Halo 1 or Halo CE Anniversary was probably the best 343 launch game. And it was also their first as soon as they took over. They gave Saber Interactive a year to develop the game, right? And it launched pretty decently. I don't remember there being a lot of issues with it. And then after that, we got Halo 4, which it launched in a decent condition, but of course, died off pretty fast. But then we got, the MCC on Xbox One, which was a colossal failure until 3 years later, until now, where the game's working. And Halo 5, which, launched working, but lacking so much content, and all that stuff slowly got patched in. It should have been there from launch. So, I don't know, with the 343 era right now, most of those games haven't been coming out in good states. Now, hopefully, that doesn't continue for Halo Infinite. We can hope, cross your fingers, whatever you gotta do. Hopefully, good luck comes upon us. But I just want to bring up 343's track record, just to point out, how well they've done so far. And again, with Halo CE's launch being technically not even their own game, Saber Interactive did the porting, and again, it's a port, so it's also Bungie's game. That's kind of a bad sign when the best games that come out in the 343 generation are games that weren't even developed by them. But of course, these were just things that I wanted to talk about, things I want to bring up, especially as I've been revisiting CE. I love that game. It's so much fun. And so, what do you guys think? Do you disagree? Do you think that Halo 5 or 4 or whatever launched in a better condition? Are you remembering something I'm not? Let me know in the comments. Subscribe, like, all that stuff. Again, this is week 1 of the new channel, and we're trying to get as much buzz as we can. Try to, flood the channel with content for the first week, and then start getting into our schedule and start just pumping out Halo content. So a like and subscribe would be highly appreciated, or a comment, or anything you can do. And I hope to see you guys in the game.